So after the shitfest of the previous story that was the Space Pirates, Patrick Troughton exits on a really high note with this story. Just want to mention that in my previous review I mentioned I hadn't been a big fan of this story beforehand. I did like it though. Rewatching it, really, really like it. So, let's jump into the War Games. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of Patrick Troughton's final story, The War Games, the Second Doctor's swan song, and as I mentioned in the pre-titles, in my Space Pirates review I said I wasn't a big fan of the story. I did like it, I had previously had it as a 7 out of 10. However, rewatching it, I really enjoyed it. In fact, I enjoyed it so much and I had enough time to watch all 10 episodes. This is probably going to be the one time I watch anything more than 7 or 8, besides the invasion in that case. Yeah, 10 episodes. Watched them in one evening. It was really great. It was actually really fun. So, my opinion on this story has gone up. So, War Games fans, rejoice. So, the War Games. The plot of this story is the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe end up in what supposedly World War I. I was about to say 2 for some reason. That's a bit more popular these days, doing a World War II story. But they end up during what is supposedly 1917, and they are falsely accused of being spies. There's this one general who is particular in making them be executed or imprisoned for being spies or, James' case, running away. Desertion. However, through the ingenuity, the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe escape, and they get Colonel Carstairs, I think it was, or I'll just call him the Colonel. I don't even know if it was a Colonel. I think it's Carstairs, and Lady Jennifer Buckingham to help them. Buckingham was a nurse driving the ambulance, and they get them to help them, and they're trying to escape, get back to the TARDIS and discover what's going on. And they soon realise that this alien race has been kidnapping humans and slotting them into different war periods, such as the 1917-esque World War I, Mexican Civil War, American Civil War, Romans, Russian War, I think, and a few others. Crimea, I think one was. Can't remember all of them, but there was a couple. So it turns out, as the aliens were placing humans into these games, with some of the aliens being some of the leaders and commanders, and they're doing this as an experiment to use humans as their soldiers in a bid to take over the galaxy. So this is basically a galaxy invasion experiment test. It's a big part of it, to be honest, but yeah, it's quite horrific and barbaric by our senses, and the Doctor even comments on that, and as do the Time Lords later on. But yeah, it makes sense. So throughout the story, the Doctor and his friends have to team up with the rebels and stop and overthrow the villains. At a similar point later on, the War Chief, who is a Time Lord like the Doctor, tries to get him on board with it so that he can take over afterwards and maybe control the universe. However, he is eventually killed by the Warlord, played by the magnificent Philip Maddock. This is probably my favourite Philip Maddock performance in the show. He is so cold and so calculating. He doesn't shout that much as well. He's so great. He's such a cool villain. Yeah, the Warlord could be one of the best villains of the show. such a shame he's erased from time at the end. We've also got this other character, the chief of security, and he talks in a bit of a monotoned robotic voice for some reason. He's not as good of a villain as the war chief or the warlord. I just don't think he's that great, and we get quite a lot of screen time, and there's supposedly this rivalry between him and the war chief, which is done fairly well. I'd say that it's done well. And but I don't know if he was that necessary of a character. I think we could have been okay with just the war chief and the warlord, as well as this scientist who's teaching the lectures to students to learn about the hypnotizing of the people. I think we could have just had those and not really had the security guy. But he's not bad. He's not a bad character. Maybe if he didn't talk in that monotone voice, I might like him a bit more. I don't know. He just didn't seem that appealing as a character to me. He was one of the few. Some of them I thought, whilst not liking them, they were important to the plot, like those aliens in the actual war zones. But I think this guy, apart from getting the war chief caught and killed by the warlords, there wasn't a huge amount for him. But that being said, I think his story was handled well. And it's quite fun seeing these battle scenes, how all these battles take place. It's enjoyable. So this is a big story, and it's great to see Jamie and Zoe taking up more leadership roles in the story as well, and fighting back at the oppressiveness of some of the leaders and the aliens, and even some of the Time Lords they have a go at some point, although I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that. And they all do a great job, and the second Doctor is also he's really great in his final story. He's just trying to save the day, but when Time Lord interference comes along, that's where all hell breaks loose for him, which makes sense. And the last two episodes are really, really great. The last one is basically them just stopping the villains, wrapping it all up, and saving the day. And then at the end, they're running away from the Time Lords. Part 10, they're trying to escape from the Time Lords, and we get some shots from the Web of Fear and the Fury from the Deep. Sorry, the Fury Den web, and then also a bit of Wheel in Space episode 1. A quick shot of at some point, but the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe are trying to escape the Time Lords, but they can't actually escape, and end up having to go to Gallifrey to take part in the aliens' trial, who then attempt to kidnap the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe, but are then killed by the Time Lords, and their planet is imprisoned until, further notice. The Doctor is then put on trial, and despite Jamie and Zoe attempting to get him to escape, the Time Lords recapture him, and they're forced to say goodbye. Jamie and Zoe's minds are erased of all the adventures post their first ones. They'll only remember their first adventure with the Doctor and just go back to their normal lives. The Doctor is then sentenced to exile on Earth. And despite being allowed to choose his appearance, they don't give him the time. They give him a couple of choices, and he criticises the options, and they have a go at him for wasting time. And he tries to explain that people on Earth are being particular, but he's not. They think he's refusing for some reason. So I don't know. Time Lords are impatient, I suppose. At least the face they chose was John Pertwee, so makes up a little bit for it. But Time Lord impatientness. Anybody? At least they listened to him about the evil threats. They then sent him back to his TARDIS, presumably, because that's how he arrived on Earth and spearhead from space. He goes back to his TARDIS, and with probably the oddest regeneration in the show. I mean, not the worst looking. No, that's yet to come. But it's just oddly in blackness and spinning. Looks a bit weird. Maybe that's inside of his head. Maybe he's been transported back to his TARDIS. He's now unconscious, standing up, of course, because he's or lying down or something. But then again, in Spearhead, he has to get to the doors and open them and then fall onto the ground. So presume he's standing up. Only time in the classic series if that was the case. But the Adventure in Space and Time recreation has him lying down. But yeah, an odd regeneration, but effective nonetheless, and it's a really emotional and really impactful ending. This is a big story and a big ending for Doctor Number 2 to go out on. It is, wow, it's a huge one. And I think it's done really well. Production design, well, last time it was just business as usual on a story that was awful. This time round we got something special. This is a special production design. Yeah, it looks really nice on us, and it makes the story look really great. And there's quite a bit of location work as well, and it looks really good. That was one of my ranking lists falling down. Acting is superb from everybody, especially our main 3 leads. In their final 10 episodes, they do marvellous performances. I will say this, Lady Buckingham disappears halfway through. She's in part 5, but we then don't see her in the second half. So basically, you watched disc 1, then you put on disc 2, and you realise none of the episodes in disc 2 on the DVD, she wasn't there. Not at all. And Carstairs, I believe it was, at the end of part 9, says he wants to go back and find her. Oddly, in the 1917 zone, I thought she was in the American Civil War zone. Yeah, I don't know, but Buckingham just disappears halfway through the story and doesn't pop up again. Couldn't write her in, I suppose? Well, maybe if you took out a little bit of that rivalry between the war chief and security chief, then maybe we could have 1 or 2 extra scenes in there with Buckingham just to wrap up the story. Or, I don't know, just write her in the other episodes full stop. I don't know. But regardless, I enjoyed this story a lot. I thought it was really entertaining, had some great moments. Like the invasion, I did think my entertainment did kind of dip a little halfway through. I was enjoying it so much I decided to put the other half on, but then the entertainment did kind of drop a little bit in those next couple of episodes, but then it went high up again for the last couple. And yeah, it just proved to be a great story. I didn't love this as much as The Invasion, but I do think after that and Mind Robber, this is the next best story of the season, and is proven to be a magnificent season finale. Like 10th Planet, it's also a magnificent final outing for the Doctor, of the current Doctor of the times. So I'm going to give the War Games a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's 100% perfect. I don't think it's quite... It's 10 out of 10 level, but it's definitely a close one. It's closer than some of the other stories this season that weren't Invasion or 10th Planet, Mind Robber. It might be closer than 10th Planet to being a 10 though. But anyway, so that's it from my review of the War Games, and we have to say goodbye to Patrick Troughton. He was amazing as the second Doctor. From day one, he was amazing. So, Patrick Troughton, thank you and goodbye. Next time, we'll be looking at John Pertwee's first story as the third Doctor, Spearhead from Space. And this is a cracking story. But before we do that, I've got 3 rankings, Doctor Who rankings to do before we start the third Doctor era. And that's the Season 6 ranking, of course, the top 10 second Doctor story ranking, but of course, and also a top 10 ranking for the decade. The top 10 1960s stories, as this is the last, War Games is the last story from the 1960s. The next story will be in 1970. So I'm doing rankings for each decade, top 10 stories from 60s, 70s, 80s, mid to late 2000s, and after 2019 ends, 2010s. And I'm doing worst to best, or least favourite to favourite, honourable mentions, bonus stories from the 90s and the early 2000s. So the stuff that's going to come under my Wilderness Years reviews. I'm going to review stuff from the Wilderness Years between seasons 26 and series 1. So including the TV movie, of course. So those will come under the rankings of the worst to best 90s and early to mid 2000s bits. But all the official episodes, all the series ones anyways, series and seasons ones will come under best top 10 60s, 70s, 80s, mid to late 2000s and 2010s, and also do some predictions for the 2020 decade. We'll see how that goes. I'll do that late 2019, early 2020. Maybe early 2019 before the release of the 2020 New Year special. If it's 2020 New Year special. If it's 2019 Christmas special, it'll be afterwards. And that episode will be a candidate for the 2010's ranking. Whether it will actually be on the list is yet to be seen. Haunted Nyman was a story from 1979 and 1980. It was split over those 2 years, and so it's a candidate for both ranking lists. Spoiler alert, it's not on either of them. So any story from 60s are a candidate for the 60s ranking, basically, for example. Anyway, that's it. I've rambled for long enough. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. War Games fans, be happy. Hang on. War Games fans delight. Rejoice, that's it. But yeah, there's also this other, the chief of security, who's this other guy? And the doorbell's just rung. This other guy, the chief of security, I just said that. Hang on. How much? P.S. If you can hear what's going on downstairs, sorry. Anyway, so I'm going to give I was about to say Spearhead from Place. That's the next story. I'm going to give the War Games excuse me. I was about to say 7 because that was its previous score. Possibly. I've got my 60s list here. Oh.